Manchester United would not have won the FA Cup final if it was not for Kobbie Mainoo. Now, that might sound obvious to say because, of course, he scored the goal, but we are talking here about a much more than just that. It's so much more than just the goal. Kobbie Mainoo was the reason that Manchester United were able to execute Ten Hag's genius tactical plan. Now, I said the other day, I spoke about the plan from Erik Ten Hag and why it worked so well. But like I said, Kobbie Mainoo was the reason it was able to be executed. It is one thing to put a plan in place. It is a completely different kind of issue about whether or not your players can actually execute. Can they actually perform the plan? Kobbie Mainoo allowed Manchester United to do exactly that. And it starts off actually from a defensive point of view. Normally with Kobbie we're talking about what he does on the ball and how excellent he is at manipulating players, etc. We'll come on to that later. But the main thing actually allowed United to do was execute the defensive side of the plan. And that was very, very key for Ten Hag in this game. Because as we know, United made a conscious effort in this game to be very narrow, very compact, make the pitch as small as possible. Of course, City therefore, for large parts, tried to do the opposite. They tried to make the pitch nice and big, trying to stretch the play. Players like Kobbie Mainoo allowed United to keep it compact, whilst also getting pressure on the ball, whilst also making sure that City could never overload us. And that's very, very impressive from such a young midfielder. So what was Kobbie's job? Well, like we've said already, it was to be narrow, it was to be central, it was to be compact and protect his defence, of course. But it was also about following Kevin De Bruyne pretty much no matter where he went. Because United are initially in this block shape. And what can be difficult when you use a block is when opposition players like De Bruyne start moving out of it. So when De Bruyne starts drifting into this sort of area, it can be difficult to know what you're supposed to do. Are you, as Kobbie Mainoo, meant to go and follow him and be aggressive, but leave this open space behind you? Or are you meant to drop off and, give him that time and space on the ball? But of course, when you give De Bruyne time and space on the ball, it's really difficult. Kobbie Mainoo done a brilliant job of getting it spot on all the time because he man-marked Kevin De Bruyne, but he didn't go too close to him. He was always close enough to De Bruyne that if De Bruyne was to get the ball, Kobbie could get there quickly. So he's close enough to get there, but he's also not fully abandoning the space behind him. He done a brilliant job of keeping the distance between himself and De Bruyne literally perfect. So when De Bruyne dropped into these spaces, Kobbie could get there and apply pressure. But in another instance, when De Bruyne's going to be over here, Kobbie Mainoo could again be there to kind of get in his face and prevent De Bruyne from ever really having any time on the ball. We can see actually in the game, De Bruyne didn't really have that greater impact, and it was because of Kobbie Mainoo and his defensive work. So of course Erik Ten Hag deserves credit for this, but so does Kobbie Mainoo for being able to execute it, because this isn't what we really associate him with, right? He's not a defensive midfielder, he's not a ball-winning midfielder. It's not what he wants to do, but he done it brilliantly in this game. We can see here, De Bruyne outside of the United block. United are narrow and compact. De Bruyne is pulled into space. This is difficult. It asks the question of Kobbie, but Kobbie had the answer. Every time, he had the ability to get close enough to De Bruyne that the second De Bruyne takes a touch, Kobbie Mainoo is going to force him back where he came from. He's jumping out of the block, forcing De Bruyne to play backwards. If Kobbie Mainoo was too deep, De Bruyne could have got on a turn, carried the ball forward, got into that beautiful half space where he loves to whip those crosses into the box. Kobbie Mainoo prevented that. And it's something he done throughout the game, from both sides of the pitch. So here, Kovacic passes the ball in behind the United block this time, and De Bruyne has drifted across the pitch, across the other side of the midfield. But again, guess who's there the whole time? Kobbie Mainoo done a brilliant job of stopping De Bruyne from ever really at all in this game, getting on the ball and getting his head up. De Bruyne with his head up is one of the best players in the world. Kobbie Mainoo did not let it happen. He was always there. He actually gets booked for this tackle, which I think is a little bit harsh, because for me, it was spot on. But basically, no matter where De Bruyne went, Kobbie Mainoo was always going to be right there with him. Kobbie Mainoo was like a rash to Kevin De Bruyne. It was like watching someone like Fred or even Ander Herrera over the past couple of seasons. Those two players, the way that they would go to a man-marking job on someone. Kobbie Mainoo done it. That's impressive, because that's a very, very young player. Of course, though, he also done something pretty special on the ball as well.
So before we continue into the video, a quick shout out to today's video sponsor, JerseyFifa.com, the home of all of the greatest football kits. Whether that be the new latest releases or the old classic ones like this, Jersey FIFA has something for everyone, and now you can check it out yourself using the link in the description down below. And also make sure to use code JerseyFifa for 10% off when you order.
So Kobbie Mainoo's strengths in possession are something that we have spoken about all season long, even dating back actually to this time last season, because what he does on the ball is special. And it's also pretty obvious at this point. He is someone who's going to retain the ball, someone who's trying to keep the ball for his side, absorb pressure, and that was key once again to allowing Ten Hag to execute this game plan. Because, yes, it's one thing being a good retention-based midfielder. It's another to have the ability to intentionally draw City players onto you, absorb pressure, and make room for someone else. For a 19-year-old to take that responsibility on is insane. In an FA Cup final at Wembley against one of the best teams we've seen in football, to have that confidence in your own ability to intentionally draw pressure onto yourself to make room for other people is a special trait. And that's how you know we've got a quality player here. The temperament and the intelligence is off the charts. It's absolutely absurd. And it allowed United to execute the game plan. Because as we've said already, the game plan initially was to sit deep, be narrow, be compact. The issue with that is that when you win the ball back, you don't immediately have anywhere to go. Which means whoever gets the ball, whether it be Amrabat or Lisandro Martinez or Kobbie Mainoo, you're instantly under pressure from Manchester City players. So this is where the retention-based ability becomes key to the game plan. It's that ability to keep the ball, draw players onto yourself, to then make room for someone like Marcus Rashford to spring onto the counter-attack. So yes, this was a transitional approach from United, but as I said in my match video the other day, it wasn't just about long ball football into the channels, it was about retaining the ball initially, drawing City onto us to then create that space in behind. And that was something which Kobbie Mainoo done to a brilliant capacity. His ability, again, to take the ball in tight spaces, drop the shoulder, get on the turn, but always keep the ball. It's an absolute joke, to be honest. He is so good. We've got it here. Kevin De Bruyne is right up against his back. And, you know, these two battled it out for most of the first half. Kobbie came out on top, in and out of possession. That's quality. But as he receives the ball here, you can see City players are going to come towards him. Kobbie Mainoo takes his first touch back towards goal. In the heads of City players, they're thinking, okay, we've got a chance here. He's up against a byline. His angles are massively reduced. With Foden, with De Bruyne, we can go get him here. We can go get him on the press. So two of us are going to go to really put the pressure on. Three end up actually doing it. But for Kobbie Mainoo, it doesn't matter because he still has the ability to play this pass. And look at the amount of space that his teammate, Scott McTominay, now has because Kobbie Mainoo took the extra touches back towards his own goal. That retention is key. We don't have another midfielder at the club who could do this, who could absorb the pressure in this way. It's absolutely phenomenal. We got it again from Kobbie Mainoo here. He's dribbling kind of from right to left across the midfield, and he's drawing Rodri's attention. He is making sure that Rodri comes with him. Kobbie, if he wanted to, could have got his head up quite early in this move and decided, you know what I'm going to do? Let's quickly grab the arrow. I'm gonna drive at the heart of the City defence. But what that would have actually done is forced the City players back. Kobbie Mainoo wants to do the opposite. He wants to draw the Manchester City players out. He wants to draw Rodri out. And you can see that. Rodri is now out of his normal midfield position, which means as Kobbie then pops the ball around the corner to Rashford, who then plays a return ball, Kobbie makes the run. It takes Rodri out of the picture. Now, unfortunately for Mainoo, Rodri is very, very good and actually managed to keep up with him. The other issue for Kobbie also is there's also Kovacic in midfield. This is Manchester City we're talking about here. One of the best defensive teams in the world. People don't realise it, but they are. Because they're so good in their battles at winning the ball in these areas. They force you into an area, suffocate you, take the ball off you. Kobbie Mainoo was the player who could break that. Who could literally break the Manchester City system single-handedly. He's already dragged Rodri out of position. Rodri's done well to get back in. Kovacic is going to come over and provide support. Yet still, Kobbie comes out of all of it with the ball. And it creates room for other people. Look at the room that Bruno Fernandes now has to receive the ball behind. And then we can go forward out to Garnacho on the far side or to Rashford on the left. We can see him now making a run. It's all because of Kobbie Mainoo's ability to absorb pressure in the middle of the pitch. And of course, this is nothing new. We've seen it all season long. The ability to take the ball in these sorts of spaces, draw people towards him, using that short stride length initially. That initial short stride length. He pushes the ball in one direction, and then we've got short stride length. Kind of little steps to draw the City players onto him. Then what he's going to do is that burst away. Suddenly here, the next step is big. The big step powers him away from these Manchester City players. It like thrusts him away from them. And it makes it impossible to catch him, particularly when he uses his body so well. You will notice the whole time, Kobbie Mainoo is using his stride to make sure that he's got his right leg between De Bruyne and the ball. Meaning that the opposition physically can't get it. It's genius. And then Kobbie was doing things like this as well. I mean, the passing behind for Bruno Fernandes is just quality. There's another one here on the counter-attack. Kobbie Mainoo slides the ball down the outside of the City defence. It's just absolutely brilliant. But for me, it's when he's in these areas, these little touches, the usage of his body against experienced players here. There's going to be John Stones and Rodri hunting him down. Initially, it's a small stride from Kobbie Mainoo. Then he starts to open it up a little bit. But the key for him the whole time is getting his body between the ball and the opposition. You can see on this occasion it's his left leg which is going to do the job because that is where the pressure is coming from. He keeps his left knee over the ball, but also between the ball and John Stones. It makes it impossible to tackle. The ball is here, Kobbie's here, Stones is here. You can't get to the ball without hitting Kobbie. You've got to foul him. And teams don't want to foul because they don't want to pick up silly yellow cards, particularly in a cup final, which gives Kobbie the ability, again, to carry out using that left knee across the ball, across the opposition, and then, again, the passing to go with it is just quality. It's just absolutely phenomenal. Now, we've spoken about Kobbie Mainoo a lot this season because I love him. I love him as a player. I think he's everything United have wanted for a long time. And in terms of in the transfer market, I think he saves us probably 70, 80 million pounds. I think if we want to go sign this profile from a Benfica or from an Ajax or someone like that, I think it costs 70, 80 million pounds. We've got him from our academy and he's only going to get better. He defensively, yes, has moments where he kind of switches off. That will come with maturity, with experience and concentration, things like that. He has areas he can improve, of course. I'd still like to see a little bit more in the final third at times, despite the quality goal. But this is a star right in our hands. Now it is all about next season, in particular, managing him properly. He's a special, special player, but don't overplay him. If we could get a midfielder, maybe we've already got it. Maybe it is Amrabat, maybe it is Mason Mount, someone who can rotate with him at times so he isn't forced to play too often. Then I'm telling you, we have a genuine elite world beater on our hands. And that's exciting. He's doing it at 19 years old. He is winning Manchester United FA Cup finals from midfield. It's not even his job almost. That is how good Kobbie Mainoo is. And that is why he was essential to this win. Out of possession, he was the player who could keep up with Kevin De Bruyne. And then in possession, he was the player who could absorb pressure, attract City players towards him to create room for other people to play the counter-attacks. Kobbie Mainoo was the key to this tactical plan and he was the player which allowed United to execute it. That is talent.